Yo, what's going on guys? Arekkz here. Welcome back to another video for Elden Ring, and today I want to showcase another fantastic build, a really powerful, potent build that we've been messing around with recently, having a bunch of fun with, and this is one for the Faith boys out there, but it's not your conventional Faith build in that it doesn't necessarily revolve around incantations, at least not as your primary damage dealer. This is all about twin daggers set up in such a way that you deal incredible damage, fire damage, frostbite damage, and the fast power stance, quick attacking motion of the blades just makes for a really awesome playstyle. You basically feel like a holy assassin just running around sort of Assassin's Creed style, hacking up the enemies, watching their health bars disappear. It is a lot of fun. This build uses two ERDSTEEL daggers, one of the few weapons that you can actually get two of during the game without the need to actually trade or anything like that, and we'll show you where to get them later on. And we're using these daggers because they scale incredibly well with Faith. And when paired with the Flame Art Affinity, this scales really well with Faith. And when you also consider there are also a lot of nice Faith fire incantations that do crazy damage anyway. Plus we have Flame in the Red Mains, which is meaty for dealing nasty posture damage and basically opening up enemies for some brutal attacks. You then throw Frost into the mix, and we have a nasty double dagger power stance combo that basically can inflict Frostbite for that big damage proc in a very similar manner to Bleed, but since we have Flames that resets Frostbite status, allowing us to reapply it for another big damage proc, this behaves almost identically to Bleed. When you then also throw buffs into the mix to increase damage further, you have a fast, high damage combo build which is super fun and potent to use. So let's talk about the details. If you guys do enjoy this, a like would be super appreciated. Comment down below, let me know what you think of this, let me know if you are going to give this a try, and of course don't forget to keep it locked if you enjoy the Elden Ring coverage. So let's talk about this build. First things first, this is a relatively easily accessible build since you can get two of the daggers. Again, one of them you get earlier on, one of them is closer more so to mid-game when you get to Alta's Plateau, and the requirements are actually quite low for the weapons. So it's something you can start building from pretty early, and then of course you can just upgrade and sort of piece things together as you progress. Now it is worth noting, most people will probably be sleepy on this dagger since when you look at it initially, you just look at it in your inventory, you're like, meh, this does not look great. When you compare it to other daggers, it definitely doesn't look like the sort of shining star pupil. It definitely doesn't seem like the one you would pick above other ones, but keep in mind that a lot of Faith weapons typically have sort of a, unique Ashes of War on them, and they don't necessarily have that customization option, but this one does allow for custom Ashes of War to be applied, which of course is very important, thus making them very flexible weapons. The scaling also, again, when you first look at it, it looks terrible. On the surface, without any affinities being attached, this does not look great. However, when you set it up correctly, bear with us, it's worth it. So let's talk about the ERDSTEEL dagger first. This has a requirement of 7 strength, 12 dex, and 14 faith, and by default, without any affinities applied, your scaling is D in strength, dex, and faith. So again, like I said, doesn't sound that exciting. But when changing to fire and frost affinity, the scaling of course changes, and again, this scales well with faith. When it comes to choosing the Ash of War, while we are using Flame in the Red Mains, that's not really a mandatory choice because this build is not around Flame in the Red Mains specifically. The most important thing is you actually want the Flame Art Affinity. That is different and not to be mistaken for the Fire Affinity. Flame Art Affinity comes from having the Red Hot Wet Blade, which of course allows you to choose like more affinity choices. We've spoken about this in the past with other Wet Blades, which of course allow you to add things like Poison or Bleed or Frost. This one, the Red Hot one, allows you to choose the Flame Art Affinity, which again is very important for this build. And we'll show you where to get that at the end of this video. As for the Frost Affinity, just throw on a Frost Ash of War. Again, there are of course Wet Blades that will allow you to apply Frost, but for the simple one, just throw on an Ash of War of your choosing. It's going to be in your offhand, you're not really going to use it. The main thing is this will allow you to have the Frost Affinity on the dagger. So now we have one with Flame Art and one with Frost. Now, of course, we will need a seal, given that we are going to be using a couple of incantations for buffs. I would recommend the Erdtree seal. We chose this one because it's the best for faith-only scaling, especially to sort of mid to end game, so it is a fantastic pick. Does have a requirement of 40 faith and scaling C in faith, but again, this is a great seal. Then for the incantations, you are going to want Flame Grant Me Strength, which is the one that gives you a 20% bonus to physical attack and firepower. Definitely synergizes nicely with this build. You then want Golden Vow, which grants you a further 15% increase in damage and a 10% damage reduction. This stacks with Flame Grant Me Strength, so of course this is a nice potent combo to use before going into battle. You're then also going to want the Fire Scorpion Charm, which provides a 12% increase to fire damage. It does also increase damage taken by 10%, so do keep that in mind. You will take a bit more damage, but it is well worth it for that fire damage. You then also have the Shard of Alexander, which is a 15% damage increase to skills. I will say it doesn't really feel like 15% in testing, to be honest, but apparently it is. Either way, this increases skill damage, and given that we're using skills, it's going to be very useful. You then also have the winged sword insignia, which of course increases damage for successive attacks. I don't actually have the footage of where we got this one from. You do get it from the Stillwater Cave. It's just one of the few times that I wasn't actually recording at the time. But either way, this is a must-have one for fast attacking weapons. You can again get the upgraded version if you complete Millicent's questline, provided of course you haven't killed her or any of the relevant NPCs. And then for the fourth one, it is basically your free slot. Throw in whatever you want, whether you want more health, whether you want more FP, whether you want more stamina, you can choose. Additionally, it's worth noting the other important aspect is the flask. To put into your wondrous physic flask, you will need the Flame Shrouding Crack tier. This increases fire damage and it stacks with the Fire Charm. This gives you 20% more fire damage for 3 minutes, so you will of course use this in conjunction. As for your stats and your point distribution, if you're building this from early on, then naturally you'll just want to put points in to be able to use the weapons. However, as you progress and as you level up and you have more points to spend, then putting them into Faith will naturally boost the potency of this build. Keep in mind, Faith soft cap is 60 and then 80, so for this setup, since we are more endgame, we're at the top end with 80. Now, to sort of show you guys how this works in actions before we talk about the locations for the items, you basically want to start, of course, by buffing yourself. So you will initially consume the flask for that initial buff. You'll then want to apply Flame Grant Me Strength, followed by Golden Vow, and then with all of these applied, make sure of course you're wielding both daggers, one in each hand. We have the one with the Flame of the Red Manes in the primary slot, so of course we have access to the Ash of War without having to single hand or two-hand a weapon. And then of course you go ham with the Power Stance combo. Keep in mind, power stancing is using the L1 or the LB button when you of course have two of the same weapons equipped, of course in each hand, and you can then go for this fast attacking combo. Doing so will see both Frostbite applied very quickly, and again don't forget that when Frostbite does proc, you get that large chunk of damage, very similar to bleed initially, and then of course when Frostbite is applied, they do take increased damage. However, given that we also have a Flame Art weapon, we deal fire damage, that very quickly removes the Frostbite debuff, which of course initially you might think is a bad thing because you're losing the damage debuff, but then because we can then reapply it, that allows you to get that second big chunk of damage. Again, therefore creating behavior that is effectively identical to bleed. Now depending on what you're fighting, given that of course we do have Flame of the Red Manes, we can use that to simply destroy the posture of the enemy, bringing them down to their knees, and then of course because we're using daggers, you can go up for a stab to basically get that critical damage, or you can just carry on going ham with your double dagger combo. But that's pretty much all there is to it. It's a very simple build to use. It is literally buff yourself up, run in, spam double daggers, which are incredibly quick, and watch as the enemy takes Frostbite and then burns, and you repeat the cycle. So let's go over where to get all the necessary pieces to put this together. First things first, for the ERDSTEEL dagger, again as mentioned you can get two of these. The first one is given by Kenneth Haight as a reward for clearing out Fort Haight. You can first speak to Kenneth by going over to this location here, this sort of a structure, this sort of fallen down thing, whatever you want to call it. Basically climb to the top of it and you can then have a conversation with Kenneth. He will basically say, hey, please go and clear out Fort Haight. So upon doing so, you then go over to Fort Haight, which is located over here. And upon doing so, and then of course reloading the area, you will then be able to speak to him at the top of the castle, and in doing so, he will give you the dagger. As for the second one, this is the one that of course you will need to be a little bit further in the game for. You will need to be in the Altus Plateau, and you want to go to the Avenue Balcony Site of Grace. From there, you then want to take the stairs down. Of course, you want to go out of the doors. Once you're out there, you then want to take a left, and you basically want to hug this pathway. Of course, watch out for the enemies that are normally down here. Depending on, of course, how high level you are, they can deal some nasty damage. So what you want to do is you want to run to the edge of this pathway, and then at the very end, there is a ladder which you can then take down. Do be careful, because when you go down here, there is an enemy that is breathing fire and will try and kill you straight away. But if you then go and take an immediate left, there will be a dead body there. Not the one you see as soon as you come straight out, but instead behind you, and that will then be the second ERDSTEEL dagger. As for the Red Hot Wet Blade, which of course you will need to apply the Flame Art affinity, you need to go to the chamber outside the plaza, which is down in the bottom right corner of Caelid. Of course, if you go over to where you're fighting Radan, you will need to go down to this plaza. And then from here, you simply load into the Site of Grace. You turn around and you go out the door behind the Site of Grace. And from there, you want to navigate your way around past the troops. Watch out for the flame turret. And then you can ignore the staircase on the left. You instead want to go right. And you want to run straight ahead. There's basically a doorway right in front of you. Go to the very end of the path. And when you go inside and you collect the item on the bottom, that is the Red Hot Wet Blade. Then for the next one, in order to get the Erdtree Seal, you then want to go over to the Prison Town Church Site of Grace near Volcano Manor, and then you want to simply run out of the door, You then want to take a right and want to do some parkour across the roofs. If you stay to the very sort of right side, you can basically avoid most of the enemies, and you can drop down, and you'll drop down in front of an open prison cell door. Go inside there, there's a purple collectible, and that is the ERDSTEEL. Next up, if you need to grab the Flame Grant Me Strength buff, the incantation, then you want to go over to Fort Gale North, that side of Grace right there. And from there, what you then want to do is jump up on your horse and then take a right and basically sort of hug the pathway there. You can avoid all of the enemies, but you're working your way all the way up to where the fort is. We don't actually need to go inside. Instead, what you can then do is once you get past the guards, you can take a left and you can hug your way around the side of the building. And then once you get all the way around, you will then find two of those sort of flame-breathing like turrets or whatever you want to call them. But behind them or between them is a collectible. If you're quick, you can go and grab it without even having to worry about dealing with them, and that is Flame Grant Me Strength. Meanwhile, if you want to get the Golden Vow incantation, you then want to go over to the Bridge of Iniquity over here, sort of in the Mount Gelmir region. And then from there, you want to run through past all of the enemies. You're basically going to be going all the way through this sort of area to get to the very end. If you have not been here before, then when you get near the shack towards the end, you'll be taken off your horse because there is an invader. The invader is not a necessary part of this thing, but you might want to kill them so that they don't kill you. However, once you have defeated them, you then go into the little sort of shack from where they came, and there is a collectible, and that is Golden Vow. Then for the Fire Scorpion Talisman, for this one you want to go over to the Seedwater Terminus Site of Grace, and from there you're then going to want to go and run up towards the castle. We'll actually be going inside the castle this time around, so once you run up and sort of go past all the enemies, take the staircase up and then go in, and you can of course defeat the enemy standing outside, but he is not a necessary part, so you can just run past it if you want to. And you then go into the door, up the staircase, and once you get to the very top, you actually want to try and jump over the sort of broken wall where you sort of see some bricks falling down. And then once you go over there, there's a little balcony, there's a ghost there, and by that ghost there is of course a charm. You can gather that, and that is the Fire Scorpion Charm Talisman. For the next one, for the Shard of Alexander, again, don't forget you will of course have needed to completed Alexander's quest line, so of course spoken to him at a variety of different locations. If you haven't done that, be sure to check out a guide on where to find him prior to that. But once you have done that, assuming you've finished all those steps, the final place you encounter him is the Dragon Temple Altar. From there, you then want to spawn and you want to run out of the door. You then want to follow the route we're taking right now, which will involve dropping off the edge. Watch out for some of the enemies. There are, of course, some nasty ones here that will definitely try and catch you. You'll need to jump through the window and continue down. Keep in mind, for this process, you are also going to need some stone sword keys in order to open the door. But once you get to the location, you want to go up the stairs and you'll then go and find a door on your left. Doing so will, of course, allow you to open this pathway. You will need 2 stone sword keys for this, but you can then take a lift up to the top. This will give you a new Site of Grace, so of course you might have this one already, but from there you then simply need to run outside and follow the route we're taking right now, which involves going around a little bit, jumping up, parkouring across, and you'll then find a platform over there, which of course normally, depending on how much you have played or how far you've played, may well have had a dragon on there. If you haven't defeated it, you will probably need to clear him and then reload this area. But assuming you have gotten rid of that dragon, Alexander will be over there and you will need to do battle with him. Upon defeating him, you will then get the Shard of Alexander, which is the great talisman that increases your weapon skills. And then finally, for the thing you need for the flask, this time you want to go to the Rot View Balcony Site of Grace. And from there, you want to go west and you want to follow the route we're taking right now. You're basically be going and working your way around to another one of the trees, the minor Erd trees. And if you guys have been to any of these locations before, you will know this basically involves defeating a putrid avatar. So, simple thing, well, I say that depending on, of course, the build setup you have. Defeat this boss, and upon defeating it, you will get 2 tiers. One of them we're, of course, not worried about for this build, but we do, of course, care about the Flame Shrouding Cracked tier. So, altogether, that is everything you need to piece this build together. And again, as you can see, it does some meaty damage, and it's just a lot of fun. Honestly, running double daggers, given the sort of fast attacking power stance combo, it is just really fun to see. Messing around with both frost and flames at the same time, I really, really enjoy this one. It is also worth noting, you guys can, of course, put Holy Affinity on the daggers if you prefer, or you could go double Flame Art for the scaling, which of course also works nicely, but from our testing, Flame Art and Frost is a very nice, good damage combo that seemed to perform much better than the other options. So that's what we did. Anyway, let us know in the comments down below what you guys think of it. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you missed our recent uploads, be sure to check out this one, and keep it locked on the channel for plenty more Elden Ring.